Welcome to the I Need Coffee and Better Ideas podcast, where we caffeinate your brain with the freshest takes in news media.
And welcome to this week's edition of I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas podcast. Today, I've got with me Lisa MacLeod of FT Strategies. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
We've seen each other, or at least I've seen you around on like all these events, and I'm like, I've never met Lisa, I've never talked to her. And then I run into you in Abu Dhabi in November, and I'm like, that is my moment. I'm just going to walk over and say hi. And we sat down, we shared, was it a pizza?
Yes, we did. We did. We shared a pizza in Abu Dhabi in a great big conference venue.
It was a huge conference venue. So that was fun. It was very exploratory for us going to that part of the world. But we learned a lot, and we worked now with SRMG in that region. So that's been good. We're very excited to have you on,
Thank you.
and very excited to have someone from FT Strategies join, and just jumping straight into it, because I read up a little bit about you before going into this podcast. And you've spent 30 years in the newsrooms across various markets.
Yes.
You've had a front row seat at the Financial Times during some of the major transformations they've gone through. Um, all tallied up, what is it about newsroom management that still captivates you and frustrates you after all these years?
Wow. How long have we got? I
We've got a
suppose
lot of
is the
time, so go
question.
for it.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much for having me on today. It's lovely, and it has been very nice to get to know you and a little bit more about Norkon as well. I really do appreciate it, and appreciate the work you're doing in the industry. Yeah, a complex industry that we work in, and I have been around for a very, very long time. I started my career in South Africa, moved to the UK in 2003, and spent about 15 years, no, about 14 years in the UK at the FT, at the Financial Times, mainly during the time that we were doing a lot of newsroom changes. So by frontline or front row seat, I guess. I mean, I was very much in the trenches with the change of our newsroom, and the reason that we were doing that at the time at the FT was to try and pivot towards a digital output and away from print. So I have really spent most of my career doing exactly that, just moving from one medium to another. I started as a print person, became very much a print and digital person, and then really finished as well. I hope my career isn't finished, but I certainly have spent a lot more time thinking about digital in the last 10 years than print. So a very, very interesting time. Why am I interested in it? Well, I've often thought about this very reason. And I mean, my intention was, quite honestly, during my university years, was to become an anthropologist. I actually did my honors degree in anthropology, and we have another famous anthropologist at the FT, actually Gillian Tett, who often speaks about her interest in anthropology. So my interest was in anthropology, which is much more about people and change and how people respond to pressure, whether that be a shortage of food or tribal warfare or anything along those lines. I think my intention was to go and work for National Geographic, because I did a combination of journalism and anthropology, and then I ended up in all of the financial newsrooms of the world instead. So I
Not a bad place to be.
I'm getting my full dose of ethnographic studies, but in newsrooms rather than in a jungle somewhere. Although it is equally as tribal, equally as interesting. The human behavior that we see when it comes to pressure and change, I think is incredibly interesting. So I have a real interest in people and how they behave, and how they fit together in organizations. So it's been a good fit for me from that perspective.
It's a great segue into sort of what I also wanted to get into here. You've said that the biggest shift is obviously from print to digital, right?
Yeah,
But that the industry hasn't kept pace in how it's structured internally. I
yeah.
think I'm going to put a little I agree with that note next to that one. What makes this transition, though, so slow? And why are some newsrooms still operating like it's, 1998?
I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what this is. I mean, it is really startling to me that even today, I mean, as you know from being part of FT Strategies, which is the FT's consulting division, we spend a lot of time traveling and seeing newsrooms all over the world in lots of different environments. Some very mature news organizations, some much more nascent. And there's no particular pattern as to who is doing better or who's doing worse. I mean, I always have a view that smaller newsrooms are often more nimble and more agile and more able to adapt, flex, and pivot to new things because there are fewer people and fewer hierarchies to block decisions being made quite quickly. But I'm still really alarmed after all of these years to find that many newsrooms are still very very focused on print, and still very uh, determined at all costs to preserve print for as long as possible, which is fine. I mean, we all understand that print is still the cash cow, although less so, I think, these days than it was. You obviously want to preserve as much as possible the biggest revenue stream in your business, but there is still an extreme unwillingness to accept change and an extreme unwillingness or inability to run both of these businesses simultaneously and service the needs of digital customers and print customers at the same time. So there's still very much an either or approach in many newsrooms. Lots have done it brilliantly and have done a very good job of it. But, I think newsrooms are set up for a very industrial type of output, which is a once a day deadline, a really big product coming out once a day, and the attention and focus of the newsroom for as long as it remains on that product, it is very difficult to pivot to something that's a lot quicker. So that very heavy industrial pull, so we often say the gravitational pull of print, is really counter to the nimbleness of digital publishing. So I've often observed that for example, I think the FT has done very very well as a digital product because we started blogs really early, actually in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it does occur to me that there's DNA in the FT newsroom, or has been for many many years, which is an understanding of instant publishing and being able to publish directly to an audience that is often not present in other newsrooms, and that makes it very difficult to pivot. So I have a lot of thoughts on that about how it's difficult. It's difficult to get our heads around it. Um, yeah.
I've read some of your other thoughts as well. I believe in some opinion piece or somewhere where I read that you've argued that circumventing editorial in pursuit of subscriptions is deathly. So how should newsrooms actually reorganize to support growth? What should a newsroom look like when it's aligned around a commercial model? We had Pernille Holbøl from Better Collective talking about similar topics as well. So it'd be interesting to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I made that comment, I wrote an opinion piece for our FT Strategies website because it's just something that really is something I'm continuously thinking about, is about why we have such a fear of change, and why are we so slow to pivot. It is definitely my experience, and I've seen this in person a lot over the last couple of years, is that um, even with the move away from digital advertising, which we can come back and talk about, which I think is really, we've made some disastrous decisions in this industry, disastrous,
I have some
and
views on that too, trust me.
and failing to charge for our most precious possession, i.e., our quality journalism, has is a collective failure of this industry that we've never recovered from, and I suspect we'll never really recover from. And when we have tried to get the genie back in the bottle by starting digital subscriptions again, but we gave away one whole portion of our revenue model, which was circulation and cover price, and just said, "Oh, don't worry about that anymore. We're just going to go to a digital ad model, which was had no chance of ever being anything akin to our newspaper digital model because of supply and demand, basic economics, too many digital ad positions and too much supply, and therefore we now at 0.0001 cents for 1,000 impressions, and that's the business that we've got. So for sure some really really shocking decisions that we've made over time. But what I have realized is, even as the industry thought that digital subscriptions were going to be our great savior, we suddenly clicked that it was quite a good idea to charge for our journalism. In my experience, in most news organizations, the marketing department is desperately trying to run a digital subscriptions business, but by circumventing the editorial team as much as possible.
Mm.
So they sort of passively waiting for editorial to hopefully file something, hopefully file enough premium pieces of content to actually have something to sell and a really good value proposition. Some are doing it absolutely brilliantly, but many are just trying to run a digital subscriptions model without actually having any input from editorial at all. And I have a view that that is just really not the way to do it. So I've got a real um, wish and hope that newsrooms do become more involved in the commercial output of the company and have a better understanding of what their role is in that. I think that those organizations where they've managed to bring editorial more closely into the commercial fortunes of the company are doing a lot better. We've got a lot of data to support that. We can
Yeah.
see it, we can definitely see it.
Yeah.
But it is, again, it's another oddity of the industry, the separation of church and state, as I'm on record talking about this for many years, is actually it's a major fracture in the way that we run our organizations, and it doesn't exist in any other industry, to the best of my knowledge, where we
Mm.
completely separate the sales and commercial aspect from the engine room or the production piece. Uh,
Yeah, I
but
mean, in the end, if you compare it to car manufacturers or pretty much any other sort of manufacturing,
yeah,
if the product team isn't in tune with the what the market wants, then sales
precisely.
goes down, and
Yeah,
in the end, you'll be a dead business. And I think
yeah,
that's ultimately the comparison that we're trying to make here is that people producing the product needs to be in tune with the what the market wants.
but
And
the
I
market
think
wants, yeah.
I've seen newsrooms, and or I should say I've seen news organizations have daily stand-ups. I forget what company I was visiting in New York last year during the INMA subscription study tour, but they showed us where they had daily stand-ups. I think maybe it was the Wall Street Journal, where one member from each team, both from newsrooms, marketing, sales, circulation, SEO, whatever it was, where they would all collaborate and just sort of kick off the day. Um,
It's
don't quote
very,
me on the Wall Street Journal,
very impressive.
some
Yeah,
newsroom, right?
yeah,
And I was just like, we're all standing there going, "Wow, okay, that's pretty cool." That's they've actually taken that step, which I
yeah.
found really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've definitely got better. A lot of people, a lot of industry observers have written a lot about the advent of bridge roles over the years. There are people in newsrooms who function as the bridge between these different departments. But in the more traditional newsrooms, there's still a very big divide. And I think, the principle of editorial integrity is absolutely sacred. I'm not suggesting for any minute, for one moment,
Absolutely
that
agree.
that is.
Yeah.
Is eroded. But what I am suggesting is that it's been taken to ridiculous proportions, where these. I mean, we know cases where editorial is in a separate building from the rest of the company, for example. So certainly a lot to suggest that those companies that have a lot more closer cooperation particularly between product, editorial, and commercial or marketing, are the ones that are really firing, doing very well, and those that are still maintaining a really great distance between them are certainly battling. I mean, internal alignment of any sort is just vital in an organization, and editorial just categorically has to be a part of that.
News organizations are obviously, some are organized in one way, some are organized in a different way, and they've got different paths into sort of the, let's call it, the CEO role.
Yeah.
Some have a journalist or a former journalist as the CEO. Some have an economist or a finance background, or someone comes from a completely different industry. I mean, I remember the CEO, I think, at Torstar, I believe he came from the aerospace industry or something like
Right.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
completely separate from. Is there? I mean, I assume there's no absolute golden nugget to the success here, but in order to organize a company to set it up for future success in digital, and to the point that we're talking about right now in the commercial side of things, is there any sort of, things that you've seen or experienced that, okay, this seems to be a common denominator path to success?
Yeah, I mean, it would be difficult to spot a real trend on that, and I think it really just depends on the company and how they operate and what they are, what they're hoping to achieve in the long run. I mean, as you know, we've just had a change of CEO at the FT, and um, John
John
Riddick.
wants that for what, 20 years? Something like that?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. John was has been head of the FT, CEO of the FT for 19 years, I believe, and of course, John was a journalist, and he came from the journalism side,
Yep.
and is being replaced by our boss, actually the FT Strategies boss, John Slade. So we're very excited about that. And John Slade is not from the journalism side, but very much more from the commercial side. So that's a change for the FT as well, and I think a very positive one because we are in a we're in a growth phase. The I think journalists that make the jump into commercial, I always am delighted when I hear about this because
Me too.
I think that they bring a very unique view of the product into the commercial fold, and I think that is fantastic. In fact, somebody was telling me the other day about one of our former journalists who's jumped into a commercial role at one of the big digital-only publishers, and I was thrilled to hear that had happened. So a very unique perspective, I think, to bring to the commercial front. And again, I see that as a bridge role because it brings some of that sympathetic thinking or feeling about different parts of the organization. So people who do jump from parts of the organization to another, I think is great. I think it's just really useful for the organization. I mean, saying that, I think journalists have a fairly bad reputation for being good managers because, we always talk about journalists as being quite solitary beings who have are very guarded with information. I mean, that's their job is to actually guard information and to keep your sources very quiet and to keep your information very quiet and to sit on great big pieces of information without sharing it until the moment is right. And to pivot that into a management role, which requires a lot of open communication, a lot of interaction, a lot of collaboration, is often it's a really big step for people to make. So I mean, I think moving into management from being a solitary journalist is a big step to make. But some have done it absolutely brilliantly, others less so.
I never thought about it like that, ever. That's such a good point.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we have seen it, and we certainly have seen how difficult it is sometimes for people to lead organizations when they come from a different environment, and have to come up with a whole different set of skills. I think at the FT we've been very lucky, but I mean, I'm thinking about some of our clients.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting take on it. Um, Pivoting slightly here because there's
Mm,
no way we can have a conversation with you and not go into search traffic.
yeah,
Because I think this is something I spend a lot of time on thinking about these
yeah,
days. And there's no doubt that search traffic is already shifting.
yeah,
I saw some stats on this the other week. ChatGPT, Perplexity, and these new platforms are not sort of, even close to Google yet. But with the growth that we perhaps should expect, you know, the new platforms will become a refer, and Google traffic or Google referrals will decline.
yeah.
Do you think publishers are anywhere close to building real direct traffic, except for in the Nordics, because we can take them out of this question? Or are we sort of sleepwalking into the next platform crisis? Because this is something that I'm sort of really thinking a lot about these days, because I can't
Mm.
think of a single time where a big platform came into our industry and did a net positive for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, and I suppose. we're working extensively in the Nordics. It's great that you mentioned the Nordics because we all look to the Nordics as being the sort of gold standard of publishing, and the rest of the world's wildly jealous of
Yeah.
the Nordics. The enormous number of paywalls, the huge propensity to pay, the brilliant tech. It's just really very irritating for everybody else everywhere in the world.
A colleague of mine once said that being a publisher in the Nordics is playing the game on easy mode.
Exactly. Anyway, no, I mean, they really just do run the most impressive businesses. So it's very good to see.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know. I mean, again, like I suppose if we think about this historically, and I can only look at it historically, and when I think about the hundreds of conferences I've been to over the years, every year there is another threat on the horizon. Sometimes they last for 2 years, sometimes they last for 1 year, they're there and then they're gone again. But I mean, we've lived through Facebook instant articles, we've lived through vertical video. It's a threat or an opportunity one way or another. Do I pivot my whole business to do vertical video? Some people did. We've lived through Periscope, Vine. We've lived through Google, and the many different changes that Google has made in algorithms. We've lived through all the social media ups and downs and the advent of all the new social media. We've had TikTok come and gone. So we are an industry that is beset by crises and enemies, and real or imagined, they are always there. There's always something there. At the moment, we've got so many to choose from that it's hard to pick which is the main one. Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be search? But I mean, to focus on search for a minute, I think this is very much on everybody's mind about what that's going to mean exactly. The particular target of people's thinking has been AI overviews, and AI overviews have been excluding hard news. I don't know. I don't think that they've opened to hard news yet. You still get a normal Google search response
Yep.
for hard news. But a lot of fear about what happens when AI overviews start indexing hard news and what that's going to look like. So, I mean, we've already got quite a lot of statistics to indicate that ChatGPT is coming up as quite a strong search referrer, which is really interesting. It's good for the publishers that have made deals with OpenAI and have their names indexed, and that they're indexed in those search results, which is a really good thing. So it's a bit of swings and roundabouts for the big players. For the smaller players, I really think it's going to be catastrophic, to be honest, because I can't really see how, when I think about my own search behavior, when I watch younger people and the way they search, I mean, they are using ChatGPT as their primary search engine now.
Yeah, 100%. I even introduced my wife to it about a month ago.
Yeah.
Now that's all she uses now.
Yeah. Well,
And
I mean,
she's,
my
you know,
daughter's bypassing. I mean, she's 12 years old now, and she's, she does starting to do a lot of schoolwork, and then she bypasses Google altogether. I mean, she doesn't even really go and look at it. I'm actually training her to go back to Google, double check what she's finding on ChatGPT. So we're doing a lot of work with her about how to search and research and double check things and make sure that it is actually correct. But her natural instinct is to not use it.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think the generations that are coming up that will always have ChatGPT as part of their environment will actually just look to their AI engines as being their primary search modes.
Yeah.
And I think that is really interesting. I don't. You asked if publishers are really ready for this. I mean, we've never really managed to actually completely conquer the problem of getting traffic to come direct to us. I do think, in a way, the big caveats that come with OpenAI, with AI more generally, around hallucinations, accuracy. How accurate. I mean, the report that the BBC did was really excellent on just understanding the kind of results that you get when you are using AI for all of your work. I think that will drive people direct, actually, to again, the big news providers, to double check their sources and to make sure that they're getting the right information. I think we have a unique role to play in that, in terms of baselining the accuracy and veracity of the news and facts that are getting put out every day. I think that that will be our role in the future. Is I mean, AI engines can only really look at retrospective news. We are looking at stuff that's happening in the moment as it's happening.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's a very unique role for us there that search engines and AI engines will not really be able to overtake in the future, which is literally reporting things as they happen and fact checking and standing it up.
This
So
is, I mean, you're speaking my language now. I mean, this is what we talk to our customers about every
yeah,
day.
yeah,
Our Live Center product does exactly that. And
yeah,
the feedback that we get from our clients is that, that's the one tool that they know they will always be ahead of AI
yeah.
and reporting live news.
Yeah. Well,
And, and
exactly.
and
It's
that
that's our
builds direct
unique.
traffic. That's
Yeah,
the
that
unique
is our
traffic.
unique proposition, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's your
Yeah.
unique proposition in this case,
Yeah.
but it's definitely ours. I mean, it's a that is what we are here to do: is report things as they happen and report what we see and hear and
Mhm.
think about.
Yeah.
Um, but but from a search perspective, I think we're yet to understand. I think perhaps the bigger existential threat really is that younger people just are not really interested in the news in the way that we present it. So, this is why I'm saying it is a perfect storm of events at the moment. It's not just search, it's AI, it's copyright, arguments and
Mm.
legislation.
Yeah.
Who's winning and losing in that battle. It's the younger generation moving away from news. It's news avoidance. People actually choosing not to engage with the news on a daily basis, for which we are getting a lot of flack as an industry because we're saying, people are saying, well, actually, you've done a terrible job of engaging us. You make us feel miserable and bad, and there's too much of the bad news. I'm sure you've seen the discussions about the fact that in the old days, we used to get like the news at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the evening. So maybe listen to the news in the radio on the radio on the way to work in the morning, and possibly look at a newspaper once a day. So maybe 3 touch points a day with news or news items very briefly. And now there's an overwhelming flood of news. And that's something that does put people off, because I mean it is depressing, it's miserable, people don't like it. So I think there really is a perfect storm of things that are leading to probably more of a crisis in the industry than we've ever seen before, but potentially also a lot of good opportunities.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end off this conversation on the opportunities. What
Yes,
are those
let's lift the mood a little, shall we?
Yeah, what are those opportunities, Lisa? What do you think if you were the chief commercial officer at a major news organization right now and you could wave your magic wand and you can say, "You know what? We're going to do this and it's going to be great success." What is that, Lisa?
Well, honesty, I think it is. I think that the it's not a missing opportunity, but I think the positive opportunity that AI is going to bring us is the ability to flex on product very quickly.
Mhm.
And I think that is something really interesting. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to think positively about how do you spin up product much more quickly than we can right now, put it out, let people have a look at it, see if they like it, and then just pivot and move away from it if you're not that interested. But in my view, in my experience anyway, product is can be stultifyingly slow. It takes a very long time to get something out. It takes a very long time to do. But I mean, the possibilities of actually being able to create a product, and by that I could mean, I mean, it could be a newsletter, it could be something, it could be an actual thing, and it could be an app, it could be
The game.
an extension, it could be anything really.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. Like I think that there's a lot of possibility there. So if we can get creative and think about how to present news in different ways, not necessarily in a new way, but in different ways that may be more appealing to people. I think that there's a lot of real blue ocean out there for us to be playing in. You know,
Definitely. We had a
really
great
exciting,
we
really
had a
exciting.
great call with a partner of ours yesterday via Fora. And off the back of that, I guess that made our chief technical officer think. And before I jumped on this podcast recording, um, my CTO showed me, to your point right now, that he had just spun up a game, or more like a quiz,
Yeah.
using I forget what tool it was. Just last night when he was just like, I got 30 minutes to do something now, and he spun up something and basically told the engine to spin up quizzes that don't necessarily have a correct answer, that where the purpose of the quiz is to spark a conversation on the publisher's website.
Amazing.
It was
Amazing.
amazing, and he did that in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you could easily, to your point, spin up something like that, maybe spend a bit more than 30 minutes, but put it live, see if it resonates. And if it,
Exactly.
you see something, build on it, you can iterate on it. And then if it doesn't get any traction at all, take it down, you tried it, and then you move on
And
to
you try
something new.
something else. Yeah. And I mean,
Exactly.
you
It
could
took
be
him
doing
30 minutes.
lots of those things simultaneously, and I think that this is going to take us a very long way from A/B testing headlines, for
Yeah.
example, where you get these marginal increases. I mean, this is actually about how can you actually do something that really was, we're always talking about audiences and being audience first, and how do you operationalize that actually? How
Mm.
do you actually operationalize that? We talk about user needs, but how do you make that actually happen in your newsroom in order to earn you more money? So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And I mean, the other thing which we are talking a lot about, because again, it's very fresh to the FT right now, is how AI is going to help with audience segmentation and being able to, and the idea of the dynamic paywalls, for example, which is all we heard about in at the Amsterdam summit, the Amsterdam summit a couple of weeks ago. It's all anybody wanted to talk about, and I think that that's a very exciting new possibility. So, as my pretend CFO or COO of my company, I'd definitely be pushing hard on that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the show here. We always finish
Pleasure.
off with the same question to everyone. So, Lisa, how many cups of coffee do you have per day?
About 3.
About 3. All
About
right, that's a
2 in
decent
the
answer.
morning, 1 in the afternoon, and if I know I've got a lot of work to do in the evening that I have unfortunately failed to do during the day, I sometimes have one. It's like my really risque cup of coffee at about 6 o'clock, just to make sure that I can hit 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. with a little bit of spirit.
Yeah, yeah, I know that feeling all too well myself.
A very nice one. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. How many do you have, Burger?
It really depends. I mean, sometimes I'll hit 7.
No.
Yeah, I'm sad to say, but I think I hover around 5, somewhere
Okay.
around there. 2.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Anyway,
Lisa, thank you so much for
thank you.
being on. I am looking forward to seeing you at the next conference.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll meet, and until then,
Thanks, Virgo. Lovely, lovely to spend some time with you, and all the very best to you and Norkon.
thank you so much, and
See you
likewise. We'll
soon.
speak soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.